Hi folks, I'm Matt Doyle, MLSsoccer.com's Armchair Analyst, and welcome back to another episode of Between the Lines. Last week we started off this series looking at the number 10, and how for most teams the primary playmaker is no longer the central attacking midfielder. Those are the guys who start centrally and then drift wide. Today we're going to look at the guys who cut out the middleman, guys who start on the flanks and do their playmaking there and their timekeeping. They control the tempo and they make chances. Since the start of 2011, here are the league leaders in assists. Brad Davis with 31, Mauro Rosales with 29, and Graham Zusi with 27. The common thread? All three are primarily wide players who are also the main avenue of attack for their team. They're the playmaker. They have the responsibilities of the number 10. Here's a goal after a midfield turnover, and we're looking at Adam Moffat's main job. Win the ball, then spray it to Davis on the flanks. And why is Davis, Houston's most technical midfielder, on the flanks? Because that's where he has time and space to settle, pick up his head, and hit a cross like this. Davis is easier to track when he's in the middle of the field because teams are better structured to stop build-up play through that central channel. So Houston use him wide. Houston themselves put a premium on stopping that sort of build-up, often using Moffat and Ricardo Clark as a central midfield duo. Neither of these guys is going to create an attack, but both of them excel at stopping it. The fact that Davis works wide doesn't make him a winger, though. Take a look at this graph of completed passes from that San Jose game. It's not the passing matrix you'd expect. You can see that there are actually no get-to-the-end line and whip-in across moments. Davis is actually facilitating possession here. It's the job of the central playmaker. He's just not central. These other guys, Zusi, Rosales, Landon Donovan even, they play a lot like Davis. They start out wide and primarily play there, and they will create from there if that's where the space is. But if the space opens up inside, that's where they go, and that's where they'll rip teams apart if they're not tracked. Let's count the number of Union players who failed to account for Donovan here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This obviously isn't textbook defense, but good teams don't just punish disorganization. They create it with their movement. That's what Donovan has done here. Donovan started wide on the right, then slipped into the central channel. When he wasn't picked up, he smartly found space right in front of the defense, then put Robbie Keane through for the goal. Look, though, at how eager Brian Carroll and Kleberson, two of the most experienced central midfielders in the league, are to close down Marcelo Sarvas and Juninho. They don't even notice Donovan. Carroll rightly steps toward Sarvas on the entry pass to Donovan, while Kleberson actually checks toward Juninho, who's 45 yards from the goal. He's forgotten about the number 10 with 100 goals and 100 assists behind him. Why? Because it's just easier to account for the guy who lines up across from you on the score sheet and who you see for 95% of the game. Players like Donovan understand this, and they make a living finding gaps to exploit in midfields that are disorganized, and they make them more disorganized themselves. Teams that can't adapt fast enough are just dying to be punished like this. That's how you hide a number 10 and still find ways for him to be creative in the central channel. Zusi does the same thing often for Sporting KC. As for Rosales, he may be the canary in the coal mine here. He spent his entire career on the flank and even said when he came to Seattle, "I'm not a number 10, I'm a number 7. But more and more often, he's popping up in the central channel earlier and earlier. He's finding spaces that maybe didn't exist a couple of years ago. Of course, there's yet another type of playmaker, a central playmaker as a matter of fact, who's still in vogue. They just don't score a ton of goals, so they're often overlooked by the casual fan, up until the 2012 European Cup. Come back next week when we wrap up our 3-part series on the evolution of the playmaker.